Well, Michael, this is normally the part on In the Blind where we try to predict what we're going to talk about. However, we were just informed a couple of moments ago that whatever it is we're doing isn't what we normally do. So all I know is I was told to prepare a 5-minute timer. Maybe we'll explore 5-minute recipes. I don't know.
Well, geez, what can you do in 5 minutes? What can't you do?
All right.
All right. Well, I guess we'll figure it out, won't we?
We'll find out in a minute. He's Mike. I'm Dan. We are most certainly in the blind tonight. It's In the Blind with Mike and Dan, and we are very much in the blind tonight because no friggin' idea what this show is about. Again, I was only told to prepare a 5-minute timer. Normally, we do 2 topics, discuss them for 20 minutes each, and then do a lightning round at the end with true false. This sounds like it's different. Would you care to explain, Beth?
Sure. Okay. So if you're new or if you've been here before, welcome to In the Blind. Tonight we're shaking things up a little bit because the boys have gotten too used to the way I structure the show and trying to keep them on their toes. It made sense. I had to throw a curveball in there. So instead of our usual mix of cold topics and lightning rounds, we're trying a brand new format built around one simple question. Was it the right call? Throughout today's show, I'll present Dan and Mike with 10 real decisions from history. Some changed the course of the world, some changed a single life, some were celebrated, some were criticized, and some are still debated today. For each one, they'll get just enough information to understand the situation, but not enough to know how it turned out. Probably. Some of them, you guys probably know how they turned out, but still. Then you have 5 minutes to decide whether they would have made the same choice. The goal isn't to guess history correctly. It's to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and make the best decision you can with the information available at the time. And we hope you'll play right along with us. As you're listening, don't wait for Dan and Mike to answer. Make your own decisions. Ask yourself, what would I have done? Jump into the live chat. Let us know. We want to hear your reasoning, your opinions, and whether you think Dan and Mike got it right or completely missed the mark. Because that's what every one of us does in real life every day. We rarely get perfect information. We don't know how the story ends. We simply put the best judgment call we can and hope it's the right one. So today, forget what you know about history. Imagine you're the one who has to make the decision. History has already made its judgment. Today, it's your turn. Let's begin.
Just to make sure I'm clear, we're getting the information right up to decision point?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have to decide, I'm assuming based on information they would have had at the time, not what we know now.
Yes. And then afterwards, I'll do a really short reveal of what actually happened and how history perceived it.
All right. I get it. You get it, Mike?
You make the call. Yes.
This actually kind of sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't expecting.
I'm intrigued.
I was expecting horror.
Yeah, I was definitely expecting something different, and it's actually it's pleasant. I think.
For clarification, does the 5 minutes start when you read this or after?
After.
Okay. All right. I guess we're ready.
Okay. It is 1962, and a relatively unknown band from Liverpool is trying to land a recording contract. After being turned away by several companies, they auditioned for one of Britain's major record labels. A record executive listens to their audition and decides not to sign them. His reasoning is simple. He doesn't believe guitar groups have much of a future, and he isn't convinced this band has what it takes to succeed. The group leaves disappointed and continues searching for another opportunity. The decision was a record executive chose not to sign an unknown band called the Beatles. The question is, knowing only what he knew at the time, was that the right call?
I thought this was going to go down the road of you're a drummer in this band and you decide this band ain't going anywhere, and you leave, and you're replaced by maybe the most mediocre drummer in the history of music.
Who wrote something about a yellow tambourine? I don't know.
And now you know the rest of the story. Good day. This is, look, obviously we know what happened with the Beatles, but even back then, the idea that guitar groups aren't going anywhere was BS. I mean, electric guitar was taking over. You look at some of the pioneers, the Chuck Berrys of the world, and it was obvious that it was going that way, and music was already shifting toward this more. It wasn't just about the music. It was about, looking and being part of a lifestyle, that whole pop music life. So I don't know, that was definitely a bad call, and not because of what happened with the Beatles afterwards, but because of the fact that it was already trending that way. Boy, that guy's probably sitting with Pete Best. Just going, hey, man. Well, I guess both of us made bad decisions today.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, because like Johnny Cash, for example, now he wasn't really a band, but his first album was released in 1957, and he was turned away too, but he kept pursuing it. So by the time the Beatles were auditioning in 1962, a lot of people had already heard of Johnny Cash. And he was starting to change that genre of music.
Can you, or do you know what the label was that turned him away?
Yes. Oh, no, I don't have that in my notes.
It doesn't matter.
I have the label that they originally signed with, but I can look it up. Hang on.
No, it doesn't matter, because my larger point is that there's a bias in everything. So I would question what record label did they walk into looking for this deal, and did it mesh with their current catalog of artists? You know what I mean? Or was it way off the beaten path for them?
Yeah. Because,
there's a bias towards what you know and what's working for you. And that's very common in business. You don't want to go off in another direction when you're doing this sort of business and it's working for you. So, were they doing more, classical instrumental kind of stuff or something like that, and then this band walks in that's just not a fit for them?
Right. If they were doing jazz and then these guys walk in and the guy's like, well, listen, man, I don't know, maybe you got a future and maybe you don't, but we do jazz here. But sometimes record labels, even if they don't necessarily do that type, if they're not known for that, sometimes they'll take a chance anyway, because that's how it happens sometimes. Some people are risk takers and some people aren't. And, sometimes when you take a risk, you get burned, but sometimes when you don't, the same thing happens.
I do have the answer to your question.
What is?
The Beatles auditioned for the label known as Decca, Decca, at its London studio. The decision itself was attributed to somebody named Dick Rowe.
I've heard Decca and I've heard Dick Rowe, but I don't have enough knowledge as to what kind of bands they covered. But
on that day, they did auditions for 2 different bands. And let's see. It was between the Beatles and Brian Poole and the Tremolos. Tremolos? Is that how you pronounce it? Anyway, that's who Decca chose to sign instead.
That other famous band, yeah.
Yes. The volume of hits from the Tremolos.
Yes, the number in the ones.
Yes.
So that is the answer to your
I guess
question.
my personal answer would be they made the right decision for them. Based on what I know and what I would have known at the time, they obviously felt that band wasn't a fit for what they do. And you know what? You walk past deals all the time. That's part of business. I've walked past different things before that have taken off, but you make a decision in the moment. So that's my take on it.
Okay. So history. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, I just think that, given where music was trending, though, I just thought it was like, it's a weird statement to say that, guitar groups, this crap ain't going anywhere. Like, that's a little bit, that's the part where I go, yeah, maybe it wasn't right for you, but your justification is way off.
Yeah, that could have just been blowing hot air, though.
I
Yeah.
I
guess.
didn't want them because they didn't fit.
Maybe that's that's what you tell yourself too. Like, they sounded all right, but I don't. Yeah, come on. This is a fad or whatever.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's why I brought up the Johnny Cash point, because I get what you were saying, Michael, that guitar was already on the horizon and it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reveal, what really happened. History remembers this one as one of the biggest missed opportunities in the music industry. The Beatles were later signed by producer George Martin at EMI's Parlophone label. They went on to become the best-selling music act, in history, revolutionizing popular music and influencing generations of artists around the world. What's fascinating is that the executive's decision wasn't unreasonable based on the information available at the time. Musical trends changed rapidly in the early 60s. Many promising bands disappeared after a single hit, and there was really no way to know this unknown group would become a global phenomenon. History ultimately judged this as the wrong call, but only because we know what happened next.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the next one?
Yeah,
Yes.
interesting. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Number 2.
All right.
Yeah.
It is 1492. An experienced explorer has spent years trying to convince European rulers to fund a voyage across the Atlantic. Most experts believe the trip would be far longer than he claims, making it too dangerous and too expensive to attempt. After years of rejection, one ruler finally agrees to take the risk and provide ships, supplies, and a crew for the expedition. It isn't a guaranteed investment. If the experts are right, the ship may never return. Queen Isabella of Spain agreed to finance Christopher Columbus's westward voyage. The question, knowing only what she knew at the time, was that the right call?
Well, people thought the Earth was flat, so they're going to fall off the side and all that kind of stuff. But, good old Isabella is just a pioneer thinking outside the box. I personally think it was the right call simply because it's what you knew at the time was that you were fabulously rich and you had money to throw at stuff.
Hmm.
And it's a gamble, but if it pays off big.
Yeah.
It's the modern day equivalent of, picking up that IPO or, investing in some kind of startup or something like that.
Big
Is it
risk, big reward.
Big risk, big reward. And that's a person who conceivably, it ended up being pocket change for them to do. So I don't think that was a bad decision in the moment. Personally, if I had that kind of loot, if the guy sold me on the project, yeah, I'd probably do it. It'd be a good call. That's the thing. He's got to sell me on it though.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the areas where Columbus is probably overlooked in history is his ability to sell.
Yeah. And I would have offered him the advice of, hey, just don't stop off at those islands and pillage everything and,
Yeah.
and do those terrible things to, the natives on those islands. But,
Yes, but we don't know that in this moment when she's making the decision.
No, that's just the advice you give him in the time. Just be like, hey, just go straight there, dude.
He's given his best televangelist of the time,
Hey,
Believe in me, and I will take you to the edge of the earth, which does not really exist. It keeps going and going, and I will keep going until such time as I find land. Just believe.
It probably should have gone without having to say that if you happen to find people there, just don't wipe them all out.
Don't-
Yeah, but my
like,
point is
common sense.
to sell this, he would have had to have sold himself as a good guy.
Yeah,
Somebody who can be trusted with her money.
exactly.
Yes. I'll be very gentle. I'll swear to you, I'll be very gentle. I'll treat the world as if it was just a soft little pillow. Yeah, no, I think it was the right call for somebody like that when you got a bunch of money. You know, again, it's like, love him or hate him. It's, like Elon Musk or any of these other big, millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires now that, fork over a little bit of their money, but it winds up paying off for them, a lot more often than it doesn't because that's how they got to be wealthy.
Yeah.
So, if you're on the table, you got a hot roll going, you might as well just keep on, keep going with it.
Yeah, you don't make more money by just taking your chips and walking away from the table.
Right. Yep.
So I don't know if we need the extra minute 20. I think we're in agreement that that she made the right call.
Okay.
Yep.
Columbus originally was trying to reach Asia. That's what he intended.
Yep.
Instead, his voyage connected Europe and the Americas in a way that permanently would change world history. The expedition opened the door to centuries of exploration, trade, colonization, cultural exchange, and scientific discovery. It also led to conquest, disease, slavery, and the deaths and displacement of countless indigenous peoples. From a financial standpoint, Queen Isabella's investment became one of the most consequential in history. From a moral standpoint, historians consider to debate the lasting consequences of the actual decision. History ultimately judges this one as one of the most impactful and one of the most controversial decisions ever made.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Ready for the next one?
Sure.
Yes.
Are you guys enjoying this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay.
Something
It is
different
fun.
to talk about.
I like fun.
And shorter bursts of our thoughts rather than
Yeah.
the long diatribe.
Yeah.
So something a little different.
Okay. It is 1796, and a country doctor has noticed something unusual. Milkmaids who have previously caught cowpox, a much milder disease, rarely seem to contract the deadly disease smallpox. At the time, smallpox is one of the world's greatest killers, claiming millions of lives and leaving many survivors permanently scarred or blind. The doctor has an idea that could change medicine forever, but there's no guarantee it will work. To test his theory, he deliberately exposes an 8-year-old boy to a material taken from a cowpox sore. Weeks later, he intentionally exposes the same child to smallpox. If he's wrong, the child could die. The physician was Edward Jenner, and he chose to test his vaccination theory on a young boy. Knowing only what they knew at the time, was this the right call?
So my milkmaid brings all the pox to the yard.
Yes.
Okay. Just so we're clear on that.
I think this one's a little bit harder. It's more of a moral struggle.
I think it fits the morality of the time.
Yeah.
People didn't live as long. There was an expectation that, you were going to get stabbed up at least a few times during your existence. You had a lot of kids because half of them died. So, I mean, people would be outraged if they made those calls today. I mean, just look back at our friends during World War II in Japan and in Germany and what they did and, the outrage from that. But in that time, I don't think there was as much of a value on life from a standpoint of it was a lot more fragile, which oddly enough probably made it less valuable to many because it was kind of expected that something was going to go wrong and kill you at some point anyways. So if I were that doctor in that time with that kind of moral landscape, I'd probably make that call.
What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for the time. Yeah, today we'd probably be outraged by the idea, although one could argue that we're guinea pigs for a lot of stuff. Things get put out there into the public, and we're sort of running on a lot of experiments. So,
well, it's all those chemtrails, Michael.
Yeah.
They're destroying us.
Stop with the communism, Dan. That's
you know me. I'm wearing red for a reason, Michael.
Well, I tell you what, right now, this is In the Blind with shoe and shoelace. One is meaningless without the other. No, I do. I really think it's the right call for the time. And even a doctor, even then, would the intent. And we talk so much on all the shows and all the different, the 87 different things that we do around here. One thing that gets kind of brought up sometimes is the intent behind something. And the intent here was in the hopes of improving the quality of life for people. And so in that time, in that moment, it's the right call. Because your intent it's not ill-willed, it's not malicious. It's ultimately trying to improve humanity. So, and better understand too, and educate. So, I think it's the right call.
Yeah, especially given the time. I don't think we need more time on this one. But Chad has a question that I think Beth is researching.
I am right now.
So these morality ones, this is something that we talk about in the TCF space from time to time too, is how so often people are trying to take like modern morality and place it on a previous time, or take United States morality and place it on another country or things like that.
Yep.
This
is a good example of having to look at something in the moment.
I think it would have been difficult, my personal opinion, even then, even though they viewed life slightly differently than we do now, because people weren't doing those type of trials. So I would think there would be at least a partial moral struggle for the doctor. And to answer the question, the boy, his name was John Phipps. He was 8 years old. He was the son of the doctor Edward Jenner's gardener. So he wasn't a relative, but he was within the circle of the doctor, and he knew the family well because he employed them.
Gotcha. Lindsay wins the chat tonight, by the way. She says, this was the era of you have ghosts in your blood. You should do cocaine about it.
Yes.
Very nice.
So have you tried leeches?
No.
Joseph's House of Cocaine.
So the experiment worked. The boy did not develop smallpox, and Jenner's work became the foundation of vaccination. Over the next 2 centuries, vaccines saved hundreds of millions of lives. In 1980, the World Health Organization officially declared smallpox eradicated, the first and so far only human disease to be eliminated worldwide. By modern ethical standards, Jenner's experiment would never have been approved. A child cannot provide informed consent, and intentionally exposing someone to a deadly disease violates today's research standards.
Nope.
History ultimately judged the scientific breakthrough as extraordinary, while recognizing that the method used to achieve it would be considered unethical today.
Well, vaccines ain't never done nothing for nobody.
Nowadays, we just put in the chemtrails.
Yeah.
That way it's distributed evenly. It's a blind test that way.
Maybe if we inject the leeches with the meth first, maybe we'd get a better outcome.
Meth leech.
Just an idea. I mean, we talk about all these weird parasites and bugs that have like supersonic powers, and
it's true.
True.
Just
a thought.
Yeah. Were we on number 4?
Yeah, we're on number 4.
All right.
It's 1997, and a struggling computer company is on the verge of collapse.
Apple.
It has lost market share, burned through cash, and many analysts believe bankruptcy is only a matter of time. The company's co-founder has been forced out years earlier after disagreements with the board of directors. Since then, he has built another successful company and become a respected innovator. Now the original company in crisis, the board faces a difficult choice: invite him back to lead the company he once founded, or continue searching for another solution. Bringing him back could save the company, or it could create more chaos. The board of Apple asked Steve Jobs to return and lead the company, knowing only what they knew at the time. Was that the right call?
Well, at that point, you have nothing to lose. You're basically at the brink of oblivion. And it's 1997, and you're just coming into the internet taking off. You're just coming into technology about to have its biggest surge in human history. And you're a company that has made computers, and you've been in this space for 10, 15 years. So now you're sitting there, you're right there. You've seen this guy already go off and do something good elsewhere. I mean, at that point, you have nothing to lose by bringing him back and only everything to gain. So yeah, I mean, regardless of what happened after that, it's the right call. When you're in a corner like that, what else, why not?
Yeah, I think it made sense. He'd already proven he was an innovator. He was out at Apple because of disputes with the board, not because he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was working on Next, the Unix Next step, which I've worked with in the past, and it was head and shoulders above everything at the time. So his innovation was great, especially if you're looking at competing against Windows.
Yep.
Next step was far superior to what Windows could offer at the time. So that made sense.
Lindsay made the comment, it's the choice between the devil and the devil that you know.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's very true. And obviously, in hindsight, history proved that out to be the right move. But at the time, I would struggle to think of anybody else that you could bring into that company to try to save it, because the tech industry wasn't as built out as it is right now. There wasn't infinite amounts of choices as to who to go grab a CEO from.
Yeah.
I mean,
that pool was incredibly
at that
small.
point, you had Windows, Yahoo was barely online, Google was not a thing, Oracle was not a thing. I mean, these things did not exist. It was like software companies and some computer companies, but nobody with like a super standout CEO that you could poach.
Yeah.
And keep
a lot
in
of the things
mind
that existed were hardware based. Like a lot of the companies you remember from that time were based around the hardware, not the software.
No, I mean, for just like the software that ran things, you had, Apple with their proprietary system. You had Windows selling it out to all the different computer manufacturers, and you had Steve, Netscape for browsing, and you had Steve working on Next Step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the logical choice is Steve.
Keep in mind that Apple, just not that many years before, was the leader. I mean, they, in every school I was in, Apples were everywhere. You didn't see Windows 3.1, maybe at the public library, but I mean, for the most part, Apple computers were the dominant.
Yeah, the first computer I ever touched was an Apple.
Yeah, the Apple IIe.
Yep, Apple IIe.
Actually, the first computer I ever touched, I think, was a Tandy TRS-80, but
Commodore for me.
Yeah, and a Commodore. And then, but Apple IIc, I believe, was the first computer, that wasn't one of those. Well, it's hard to remember which came first, but I think it was that. But either way, they definitely were first in on all that. I remember using a graphic user interface on a Mac or on an Apple first, before ever getting to a Windows machine. And then Windows 95, crappy though it may have been, was a game changer. And Apple was falling behind at that point, but it wasn't, as Dan said, it wasn't due to Steve Jobs' lack of vision. It was because the board, they just couldn't get on the same page.
No. But I think he went off and built a better product than all of them had at the time.
Yep.
So based upon that, I think it was the only call to make personally.
Yeah.
Lindsay said at the time we were asking Jeeves, which is true.
Very true. All right, I think we're good. I think that was the right call.
Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997 as the interim CEO. Over the next several years, he simplified the company's product lineup and introduced the colorful iMac and helped launch a string of products that reshaped entire industries, including the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Apple went from being a company many expected to fail to becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world. At the time, however, there were no guarantees. Jobs was widely regarded as brilliant, but also demanding, unpredictable, and difficult to work with. Some believed bringing him back would only repeat the conflicts that had led to his departure in the first place. History ultimately judged this as one of the greatest turnaround decisions in business history.
Yep, totally agree. All right, number 5?
Yeah, number 5.
Go.
It's the fourth quarter of the 2015 Super Bowl. One team trails by 4 points, but has driven to the opponent's 1 yard line with just seconds remaining. The offense has one of the best power running backs in football, and nearly everyone watching expects the ball to go to him. Instead, the coaching staff calls for a pass play. The quarterback throws into traffic. The decision: Seattle Seahawks chose to throw the football instead of handing it to running back Marshawn Lynch from the 1 yard line. Knowing only what they knew at the time, was this the right call?
This reeks of William Perry and him getting the football in the Super Bowl instead of Walter Payton. It worked there, but it was a stupid call.
Yeah.
Because you've got the greatest running back of all time on your team. At least at that point, he would have been called that. And you give it to the fat guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But here with Lynch, I don't remember how that play came out. Do you, Michael?
Well,
I'll tell you after you're done.
Yeah, I know you'll tell.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I would have given it to Lynch because I remember Lynch.
Right.
And he was dominant.
Yeah. So Seattle was, remember, they had already had a pretty bad Super Bowl experience back in 2005 against the Steelers. 05 or 06, the years run together now.
And a bad one against the 49ers, as I recall, before that.
Yeah. So the thing is that look, there's two sides to this, right? There's the idea of, well, if you do what the other team expects you to do, they've already planned for it. They already have a scheme for it, but you're on the 1 yard line. Marshawn Lynch is pretty much at that time, while he may have been a man of few words in press conferences and certainly got fined for it by the NFL a number of times, he was also just an absolute monster. This was like the peak of his career, basically.
Yeah.
How do you not hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch in that situation? How do you not do that? You've made it to this point. I don't. That was. It was not a good call. And I know some people tried to defend it, but most could not. I remember, being debated by all the talking heads on ESPN, and Fox and all those, and Stephen A. Smith about lost his mind, like he always does over everything. So
I think we never turned on a timer, so
That's okay.
it's fine.
But I think there's a propensity in pretty much everything to try to be cute sometimes, when really what you should do is you should continue to power through with your best options rather than be cute. And that's a sports thing. It's also a business thing. I've kind of always, Beth will agree with me, I'm sure, that's kind of been my business mantra. We keep things simple, and we don't try to get cute about stuff. We make smart decisions that move the ball forward. Moving the ball forward here would have been Marshawn Lynch. I'm sorry. It was a bad call.
Well,
when you have one of the best players in football on your team and you're that close to getting it over the goal line, you put it in that guy's hands and you let the line do its job to make a hole for him.
I will say, just again, at the risk of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, if you are a team, I'm going to use, as a Vikings fan, and I'm going to use the greatest.
Sorry about your new quarterback, man.
God. The 1998 Minnesota Vikings, the team that at the time was the best offense in the NFL. This was a team that basically got there by taking a lot of chances. You look at the guys on the Vikings at the time. You looked at that team that they had. Well, a lot of those late 90s Vikings teams, with Chris Carter and Robert Smith and Randy Moss, and they were just a powerhouse. So that they got there by taking chances. What they did in the NFC Championship game against the Falcons was mystifying. Dennis Green was a great regular season coach, but I don't know what happened to him when he got in the playoffs, especially that year. He just decided against the Falcons to go conservative and just run it, in what you would call the traditional way and make the safe calls. But all year they'd score a touchdown, they'd go for two. They wouldn't just kick an extra point. They'd go for it on fourth down constantly. They would do unconventional. They'd run it on third and long. They would do all sorts of unconventional things, and it worked. And then in the NFC Championship game, they didn't, and they wound up. Well, their Anderson, their kicker that I think was like 34 for 34 all season, missed a field goal wide left, I believe, if I remember right, or wide right, one of those. He shanked it, and that gave the Falcons the opportunity, and of course they won, and then they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl. And Vikings fans will look at that particular team as really probably their best opportunity to win the Super Bowl, because they absolutely would have had they won that. So yeah. But when you fast forward to Seattle, it's sort of the opposite. Is they got there with Marshawn Lynch. They got there by playing the percentages, and they didn't.
Yep. They got cute. Now, whether it works or not, that's the thing, is in that situation, I think you still have to go with you should go with your best player. Yeah. It's just like LeBron James in the NBA finals in, 2016? And he doesn't take the final shot. Like, why? Yeah. Why? That was dumb. Yep. So that's where I'm at with it. Yeah. Just a bad call. Real quick, kind of like in the movie Hoosiers at the very end, where their best player, Gene Hackman, was saying, no, we're going to have this other guy take the shot. And the best player stood up and said, no, I'll make it. No. He kept his coach from being cute, and they won. Anyways. Yeah. All right.
So the pass was intercepted by Malcolm Butler of the New England Patriots, ending the game and securing a Patriots victory. The play immediately became one of the most criticized coaching decisions in sports history. However, the statistics tell a little bit more of a complicated story. Passing from the 1 yard line in that specific situation had been a relatively successful play throughout the season, and throwing the ball also preserved the clock, giving the Seahawks additional chances if the pass fell incomplete. The decision itself had sound strategic reasoning, but the outcome was absolutely disastrous. History ultimately remembers this as one of sports' most controversial judgment calls, even though many analysts still defend the logic behind it.
So he's playing Moneyball.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Ready for the next one?
So you said there's 10 of these, so we're
Yes,
halfway through.
We're halfway through.
Give us some feedback in the chat. Let us know what you think of this format, so Beth knows whether or not to do it ever again.
I personally, I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty all right.
We get to cover more ground in each show this way too.
Yeah.
Because we get to kind of jump from
and a wide range of
topic.
topics so far too, which is also good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to have different formats either.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're not always doing the same thing. All right, number 6.
All right. It is June 1944 during World War II. The Allied forces have spent months preparing for the largest amphibious invasion in history. Thousands of ships, aircraft, and troops are in position, but the weather has turned against them. High winds and rough seas threaten the operation, and the military's weather experts disagree about what conditions will be over the next several days. People disagreeing about the weather. I mean, this is right up your alley, Michael. If the invasion is delayed, the carefully planned operation could fall apart. If it proceeds under poor conditions, tens of thousands of soldiers could be placed at an even greater risk. The commanding general must make a decision with incomplete and conflicting information. Dwight D. Eisenhower chose to proceed with the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. The question, knowing only what he knew at the time, was that the right call?
Well,
I mean you know how it turned out, but
yeah,
it's more complicated than that if you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of the situation.
But I would almost argue that the bad weather and I would almost argue that reaffirms the nature of it being a good call, because who would have expected that in that situation?
That is also a very good point.
Yeah, the bad weather offered cover.
Yeah. So,
and it was still an absolute slaughter on both sides.
It was. I'm sure, this is one of those where you could even go a day after that. Was it the right call? People would have probably been like, absolutely not. Because sure, we don't, even days after, you don't know that is the single moment that changes the tide of World War II. There were so many casualties. It looked like it might have been, because again, we didn't have access to instant information. So we knew the losses were pretty substantial. So, but we didn't know the depths of that. We had no idea, really how things were turning right away. Yeah, it was the pivotal moment, but we didn't know it was the pivotal moment really for weeks or months to follow.
That's always the case in war. You don't know things in real time. Like they don't, like the various declarations of war. When did the Civil War start? When did World War I and World War II start? You don't really determine that until after the fact. When you look back at the totality of events, and you say, okay, this is where it started. So the real-time info in war isn't good. It was a risky call for sure, whether the weather was good or not, because there was so much of your force that was being put into this one place.
Yes.
And it was a slaughter on both sides and a whole lot of life lost. So it was daring. And, then there was that whole thing after where they had to go save Private Ryan. So that was problematic as well. You've got Germany running over Europe. at some point you have to make a call that involves brass balls.
Yeah.
This was clearly the one.
Yeah, because they weren't leaving England alone either.
No.
And they would have very likely just continued on. It's not like they had plans to stop.
I think in the moment they needed the big play. Because, yeah, you had the Blitz going on. You know, France had been completely overrun. A whole bunch of other places in Europe had been overrun. I think by that point, Germany was pretty stalled on the Eastern Front with Russia, so they weren't going too far there. But there was still a lot to lose. And if Germany takes over Western Europe, then there are an ultimate threat to the United States.
Well,
despite the ocean in between.
They'd already taken over the Netherlands, which
especially with
Greenland.
their V2 rockets. If they had, that was only a couple of moves from being very bad. They had the better rockets. They were also working on a nuclear program. And if they had beaten us to it and not been stopped at Normandy, and turned the tide of the war there, if they had that entire West Coast from which to launch against us, we'd all be glowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a brass ball call, but I think the right one in the moment. You needed to do something big.
Again, especially with the weather and all that. It was like that. What better time?
Yeah.
You catch him slightly off guard.
Yep.
So,
I think it was a good call.
Yep.
The invasion succeeded in establishing a foothold in Nazi-occupied France, making a major turning point in the war in Western Europe. Although the Allies suffered heavy casualties, the operation ultimately helped pave the way for the liberation of France and the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. After the invasion, it became clear that Eisenhower had acted during a brief break in the weather. Had he delayed by even a day or two, conditions would have become significantly worse, potentially postponing the invasion for weeks. Before giving the final order, Eisenhower reportedly accepted full personal responsibility for the possibility of failure and even prepared a statement taking the blame if the operation was unsuccessful. History ultimately judged this as one of the greatest military judgment calls ever made, even though success was far from certain when the decision itself was actually made.
All right. Very good.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
The chat got quiet. Comment, you guys. Let us know what you think.
They're perplexed by this format.
Maybe. All right. The next one. It is 1995, and one of the most closely watched criminal trials in American history is coming to an end. For months, the jury has heard testimony, examined physical evidence, and listened to arguments from both the prosecutor and the defense. The evidence is complicated. DNA evidence is still relatively new to many jurors. Questions have been raised about how some evidence was collected, and the defense has argued that mistakes and even misconduct occurred during the investigation. Now 12 jurors must decide whether the prosecution has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury found OJ Simpson not guilty of murder. Knowing only what they knew at the time, was this the right call?
Fuck no.
And next question. I mean, yeah, come on. Like that.
I know, but like I said, you still kind of got to put yourself in the
even
position.
in the time, just everybody was just like, look, dude, he turned two people into human Pez dispensers. His blood was all over the place. His DNA, even though DNA wasn't quite as refined as it is now, it was still there. Regardless of the fact that Mark Furman may well have said racial stuff some years earlier, I don't see how that's relevant.
I'm not
it's-
laughing at you, Michael. Lindsay just said anything that leads to the rise of the Kardashians is a bad call.
You know what?
Match point.
You know
Lindsay.
what? I'm leaving. Lindsay, you take over. Lindsay wins the internet today.
Yes.
No, that's just one of those things. I remember I was in a class. I was in my newspaper class at the time when we watched this verdict live. And,
I watched it live too.
Everybody but one person was pretty upset by that verdict in the classroom. And the one that wasn't definitely was very jubilant. Ran out of the classroom and celebrated in the breezeways.
Oh yeah, we had people running through the halls like screaming. Literally,
we had a few fights that started that day.
Yep, we did too.
Yes, and that was it, man. That was my senior year. So
the funny thing was
in junior high.
They totally repainted the image of that man. He had left behind his community. He lived in Brentwood, for F's sake.
Oh no, I was in high school.
Which is like the whitest of white over there.
Yeah.
That's who he hung out with. But yet they rebranded him as some kind of a hero for the African American community, of which he was not. He could not have cared less about them, quite honestly. But they framed it in the shadow of Rodney King. And that is what the jury was shown, was look at these bad police and how they beat up on black people. And, they're taking advantage of this situation right now to beat up on yet another black person. And OJ is innocent. I mean, just look how great he is. And he was
in the Naked Gun, for God's sake.
Yeah. I mean, there's the blood everywhere and, all of that, but that doesn't matter.
They planted it.
Black guy. They planted it. They took advantage of him.
Well, didn't even Nicole's family come out and say that she was like scared for her life? And I mean, there was all sorts of
there's that 911 call and they said, "Oh, he's here again," or something like that.
Yeah.
And this was. It wasn't like OJ was completely, an innocent person all the time and, led this saintly life and then just decided one day to snap. He had shown up over there before.
Yeah, he had a DV conviction.
Right.
Ahead of it.
So this is just one of those things. Now, I will say the prosecution wasn't exactly, they certainly didn't do themselves some favors. With some of the ways that they presented their evidence and the way they carried themselves. There was certainly some weirdness there, but even so, this was, and I know look, LAPD did not have a good reputation at the time, which is true, but even that just because, okay, we've got some bad cops in the force, even that, still, the evidence was just so overwhelming, and maybe that was a little bit of payback for Rodney King. And I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what that was about. I really couldn't tell you. I just, ultimately, the right call too, because years later, OJ kind of got like 33 years for what was
stealing his own shirts.
It's kind of BS. Yeah.
That wasn't right either.
No.
Right.
I want to modify my answer.
Okay.
I said that, it's a bad call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it's both. Because here's the reason why it was a good call. And maybe it's how the jury saw it. I mean, some people wrote books and all of that, but you still don't fully know.
Yeah.
Right.
But I wonder, and I always have, if the jury made that call because they did not want to be the ones who had it hung around their necks that LA burned yet again.
That is very possible.
And if that is the case, then they made the right call
But
because
for the
they
wrong
set
reason.
because they set one man free and saved hundreds of millions of dollars in property damage and probably dozens,
Countless
if not
lives.
more, of lost lives.
Yeah.
So it depends on perspective, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting point.
However, years later, what we saw, remember with the Derek Chauvin trial, there was the specter of more riots there if they made the wrong call on that.
What the public considered to be the wrong call.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so that was, it's one of those things that I think you have to do the right thing. You're tasked as a juror to analyze the facts of the case and make your decision based solely on those things. And that's what you should do. But jurors are humans. And while that might be your instruction, and that's what I think I would do in that situation, other people might have they might be weighing other things outside of that. And that's humanity. I mean, we talk about all the time.
They didn't want their family to be targeted and,
judges are humans, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and sometimes you make calls that are more in line with, your own values rather than necessarily what's codified in black and white. So Dan makes a very good point there, but for me personally, I would have still said guilty, but regardless of, but I do agree with your point, Dan, that maybe that's what they were thinking, or at least some of them might have been thinking that.
There's a greater good argument for sure, but what say you, Beth?
After deliberating for less than 4 hours, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. The decision immediately divided the country. Some believed the jury reached the correct verdict because the prosecution had failed to eliminate reasonable doubt. Others believed evidence overwhelmingly supported guilt. 2 years later, in a separate civil trial, with a lower burden of proof, a jury found Simpson liable for the wrongdoing deaths of Ron Goldman and Cole Brown Simpson and awarded millions of dollars in damages to their families. To this day, legal scholars, attorneys, and the public continue to debate whether the criminal jury reached the correct decision under the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. History ultimately remembers this as one of the most controversial jury decisions in American legal history.
All right.
Yeah.
What are we on, 8?
We are on 8.
All right, go.
It is April 1970. An explosion has crippled a spacecraft on its way to the moon. The crew is hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth. Oxygen is rapidly being lost, power is limited, and nearly every decision could determine whether 3 astronauts live or die. Mission Control quickly realizes there will be no moon landing. The new objective is simple: bring the crew home alive. Engineers and flight controls work around the clock, debating different ways to return the spaceship safely. One option is to abandon the mission immediately and turn the spaceship around. Another is to continue looping around the moon using its gravity to help slingshot the astronauts back toward Earth. The choice is risky. If they're wrong, there might not be another chance. The decision. Mission Control chose to continue around the moon using its gravity to return the crew of Apollo 13 safely to Earth. Knowing only what they knew at the time, was that the right call?
Well, of course, all of this was just enacted on a Stanley Kubrick stage, right, Michael? So the actual risk there was 0 anyways.
Yes.
But the script demanded that they go around the moon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to make it look better.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense for them to have done it the way that they did, because that spacecraft had already built its momentum outward, and to overcome that, you would have had to have burned really all the fuel And I don't even know, quite honestly. I remember I've heard this debated before, and I don't remember if there was even enough fuel to necessarily pull it off to stop that momentum and pull it back the other way. And then you leave no fuel for correction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you gotta slingshot around and come back in the right direction and preserve your fuel for corrections, which, as I recall, they had to make a correction on the way back too.
Yeah.
Because they were a little bit off course.
Right. It's this is one of those where, again, it's a gamble, but the gamble is really the better option than the not, because at least you will preserve your fuel. You'll have enough of an opportunity, using the gravity of the moon to fling it around and come back to Earth. It just, from a physics standpoint, it made more sense. And again, either choice was really, it wasn't like you had great options, but one seemed, even though it seemed riskier, was probably, from just a numbers game, was the better way to go. But at the time, this was one of those where you kind of just had to flip a coin. It was going to be a risky call either way. So this is a hard one to answer if, they made the right call or not in the moment. We know how it turned out, but, in the moment, it's like, hey, how would you know? I guess you just have to say, well, this is the more likely outcome, but it's still not good.
Yeah, I think in the moment I would have made the call to go around the moon.
Yeah.
It's the most economical. Yeah, there's a risk if they start leaking oxygen and whatnot again. I get that. But if you tried to slow the momentum of that vehicle and pull it back towards Earth, you would have spent everything that you had. And if you were even just a little bit off, because re-entry is a very specific alignment so that you don't burn up.
Yep.
And if they didn't have anything left to make the corrections, they probably would have burned up. So.
And I did look up your question, and the answer is not really. They didn't really have enough fuel left.
That's what I thought. Not to do that and make the corrections they'd have to make and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think we need more time on this one, do we, Michael?
No.
All right.
Mission Control committed to the free return trajectory, allowing the moon's gravity to help send the damaged spacecraft back toward Earth while conserving precious fuel. Over the next 4 days, astronauts and engineers solved one problem after another, including power shortages, rising carbon dioxide levels, and limited navigation capabilities. Against extraordinary odds, the crew splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The decision has since become a textbook example of calm leadership, teamwork, and problem solving under extreme pressure. At the time, however, no one knew whether the plan would succeed. History ultimately judged this as one of the greatest crisis management decisions in the history of space exploration.
Yeah, I will say nobody ever really knows if anything's going to succeed.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's part of why these discussions are fun, because you can hypothesize all the what ifs.
That's true. And number 9.
Number 9. It is 1912, and a brand new luxury ocean liner has struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. Although the damage isn't immediately obvious to most passengers, the ship's designer and captain quickly realized the situation is far more serious than anyone imagined. The ship doesn't have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Panic could turn a terrible situation into an even greater disaster. The captain must decide whether to begin loading lifeboats immediately, risking widespread panic if he's wrong, or delay while gathering more information, potentially losing precious time if he's right. Edward Smith chose to begin evacuating the sinking of the RMS Titanic before most passengers understood the danger. Knowing what he knew at the time, was that the right call?
The the right call to start evacuating right away?
Yes.
Absolutely. Because the one thing with the Titanic, which by the way, we need to build that next year.
Yes.
I've been sitting on the Lego Titanic for like half a decade now.
It's going to take forever
to build it. But you have to remember that the Titanic at the time was essentially an experimental vessel. I mean, you had the Olympic as well, but in that had gotten banged up.
Yeah. But of course they called it unsinkable.
Yeah. And there's a conspiracy theory that they were actually switched and the sinking was on purpose for insurance purposes. I don't buy that.
I don't either.
But yeah, I think at the time he made the right call. Where the wrong call came in was that I don't think it was communicated to those in charge to pack those boats, because none of them were filled to capacity, and that just added to the amount of death. Because, I mean, the worst case scenario, they figure out that the vessel is still seaworthy. They can't move it. So they radio for help, wait for help to come. But in the meantime, they just load people back on the boat.
Yeah.
You know? So I think the call was the right call. The execution of it was incredibly bad. I don't know if this depiction is right or not, but not just in the movie Titanic, but in a lot of books and everything else, because I've done a lot of Titanic stuff because shipwrecks and the sea and stuff really interest me. But there's always this depiction of Smith being just dumbfounded that his ship was sinking and like wandering around, not always knowing what to do. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it was true, then that was a failing, because he needed to be going to his people and instructing them to fill those boats. Period.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole women and children first thing, that's great. But if all you got in line is men, load some men on there. Yeah. Pack those boats.
And I guess one side of the ship, they kind of were loading some men on there. And the other side, they weren't. And then because I've read and watched so much about the Titanic over the years, and I guess one piece of evidence out there is that this, which kind of adds to the you make the call here, is upon setting out in the first place, they discovered there was a coal fire in one of the bunkers.
Yes.
And it is believed widely that this coal fire, there's even a photo of Titanic, and you can even see a small, darker like stain on the hull near one of the coal bunkers, near the forward coal bunker. And it is believed that this could have further weakened the structural integrity of the hull. Now, would that have made any difference at all? No one could ever know. But the captain knew about it. And, a few other people on board knew about it. Certainly the people that worked down, in that coal bunker knew about it.
Yeah.
Firemen knew about it, So this is one of those things where I think, you have all this information, and you have some information that isn't, publicly known. I mean, it's probably a good call, and you don't know the nature of the damage, but you know that other ships have sank from striking icebergs before. I thought this was going to be the question of, where they, should they have even tried to turn at that point, knowing that, you're going or should they have even been going at 21, 22 knots in the first place? There's a lot of calls that were made here that were bad, but this is one of those where I think the captain kind of realized this might have been the smartest thing, that he realized that the ship is damaged. Yeah. And
there was a lot of comedy errors with that. The lookout didn't have their binoculars. They were locked up in the purser's office, but the key was left ashore.
Yeah.
So that was a problem. They've done analysis on recovered rivets from the hull plating,
Yeah, they
And
used.
one of the theories is there was too much slag in the rivets, so they were brittle. So as soon as they made that contact, the rivets snapped. And then, ironically, if they had just hit that iceberg head on, they would have been fine.
Yeah, because
the ship wouldn't have gone anywhere, but it wouldn't have sank.
It would have collapsed the forepeak and into the first hold. But there's a big all those ships had a collision bulkhead that went all the way up to the boat deck on the forepeak on the forwardmost compartment, and they had that for that reason because and there was a ship that did just that. What was that? What ship was that was years earlier that ran into an iceberg head on? And while yes, it was damaged, and yes, some people did get killed, in fact, but the ship didn't sink. I'm trying to remember what that was, but it happened some years earlier.
Dan,
yeah. So anyway, that was
the SS Arizona.
Okay.
Hit one head on.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it did not sink.
1879.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of analysis was done. And again, people would have died, but it wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been nearly as many. That's for sure.
No, when they tried to move around it, they just ripped a big hole in the side and flooded too many compartments.
Yeah.
What say you,
because
Beth?
they were, and also because they tried to slow down when they went to turn. That was the other thing. They went to use the reversing engines. It's like, well, don't do that. I mean,
Then they just scraped along the iceberg.
Yeah. You may have still hit it turning, right without using that, but you might have only clipped a compartment or two and you would have been okay.
Yep.
So Captain Smith ultimately ordered the lifeboats lowered, following the custom of women and children first, because many passengers initially believed the ship was safer than the small lifeboats. Several of the first boats only left partially full. As the extent of the damage became clear, the evacuation became increasingly urgent. More than 1,500 people lost their lives, while approximately 700 survived. Historians continue to debate many of the decisions made that night, but beginning with the evacuation, when he did, likely saved hundreds of lives. Had the captain waited much longer to act, even fewer lifeboats may have been launched before the ship actually sank. History ultimately judged the decision to begin the evacuation early as the right call, even though the tragedy itself became one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history.
All right. Last one.
All
right.
It is December 1903. Two brothers have spent years designing and building flying machines. They've endured repeated failures, crashes, skepticism, and ridicule. Many people believe controlled, powered flight is simply impossible. After another difficult attempt, the brothers prepared for yet another test. Their machine is fragile, the weather is challenging, and another failure could mean serious injury or the end of the project altogether. They have every reason to pack up, go home, and admit defeat. Instead, they decided to try one more time. The decision was that Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright chose to make another powered flight attempt at Kitty Hawk. The question, knowing only what they knew at the time, was that the right call? I think this one is...
Yeah, if they wanted to.
I think this one is interesting, though, because they could have lost their own lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean... that was
the personal risk was quite great.
Yeah, but that was their choice. It's not like this isn't like one of those wartime decisions or something like that. I also am not of the opinion, and I never have been, that was the first flying machine. Well, but that's another discussion.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I've certainly read enough about that. Other people had tried to invent flying machines and actually were killed doing so. And, they were just viewed as, crazy people, and so sort of lost in history. But, this, again, it's the right call, but they could have waited. They could have, but I think they were so, like a lot of people that are inventing things or experimenting with it, that you want to, a lot of people are impatient with that. They want to get it
vision.
done. Yeah. And you've spent so much of your time on it, and you don't want to delay.
Yeah.
You want to keep the momentum going, which I think, and if you've ever been, if you've ever stayed up all night working on some project or just something, and you just want to get it done, you don't want to put it off another day. And so for them, it was the right call. Now, some people probably wouldn't have done it that way. Some people would have waited, but, for them in that moment, it was the right call. Obviously, we know how it turned out, but I think in their mind, that was the way to go. But other people would have definitely made a different decision, I'm sure.
I think that single track mind, that tunnel vision and goalpost, that absolutism, that or bullheadedness that a lot of not just Americans but just people in general have, is one of humanity's greatest strengths and also one of their biggest flaws, because that's how a lot of things have been developed or found out over the years, but also it's caused a lot of chaos and death in wars, etc. It's definitely a double-edged sword, in my opinion.
If for me, freedom and America, man. Seriously, I mean, if they wanted to run with it, more power to them.
Yeah.
Because innovation, by definition, is risk taking, and if they had it in their minds that, you know what, we're just going to tweak this one thing and that's going to make the difference, and we're going to make another run and it's going to work this time, and they feel like they've got the momentum to get it going, absolutely. Lindsay said in the chat, but I've done that and it ended disastrously. I think a break, a meal, and a night's sleep before you try again is always the best path. I get what you're saying, Lindsay, but I don't know that it is always the best path. Sometimes you have to continue with your momentum, whatever that momentum may be. In that moment, that momentum was probably it was probably something. No, it was probably a combination of certainty and bravery.
Yeah.
And if you sleep on it, all of a sudden you're not as brave, you're not as sure necessarily. Maybe you're more sure and more brave, but there's the possibility that changes. But in that moment, if they were feeling it,
yeah,
you know what? I probably would have done the same thing. I've done the same thing, where in the moment I've thrown caution to the wind from time to time because I believe in it. And yeah, it didn't work before, but this time it's going to. And sometimes I've been right.
Yeah.
Not always, but sometimes. So I don't know. If I were them and if that's what they were feeling, I probably would have made the same call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
All right. So on December 17th, 1903, Orville Wright completed the first successful powered controlled flight in history. It lasted just 12 seconds and covered about 120 feet. The brothers made 3 more flights that same day, each improving on the last. What seemed impossible that morning became the beginning of modern aviation. Their success transformed transportation, commerce, science, and eventually even space exploration. Yet when they decided to try again that day, none of that was guaranteed. All they knew was that years of persistence had brought them one more opportunity. History ultimately judged this as one of the greatest judgment calls in history, choosing perseverance when giving up would have been far easier.
Yep. All right. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
It was different.
It was different.
I liked it a lot.
In a weird way, a little less pressure because we didn't have to fill 20 minutes at a time. Not that we can't do that, but it's also fun to jump around a little bit.
It is.
So you let us know in the chat if you feel different, but I think this might be a keeper.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun.
Use it from time to time. I don't think it takes over the original format, but
yeah.
But I think it's fun.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Beth.
You're welcome. Got to keep you on your toes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Toes kept. All right. So Monday we'll be back. 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific.
7 p.m.
I said that, didn't I?
You said a.m.
Whatever.
You said 7 a.m. Eastern and 4
Show up
p.m.
at the
Pacific.
channel whenever you see fit. If we're not live,
yeah.
there'll be programming here you can watch.
Yeah.
I do too much of this stuff, Michael. I'm losing track.
I hear you.
I need to just start turning on the camera at like 5:30 in the morning and just leave it on and just run from show to show until I fall asleep.
Yeah.
I think that's the answer.
That is the answer.
All right, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on Monday. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, a half an hour earlier if you're a channel member. Michael will have his weather video at some point tomorrow, where he will either be roasted or he will roast.
Yes.
One of those things will happen.
Or both.
If you haven't watched his video from today, there's some roasting involved.
Yes. It's entertaining. Yes. So Michael's linked up here on the channel, so go check out his video. Somebody made him angry. And much like Mr. Banner, you would not like him when he's angry.
and then both Dan and I will be back tomorrow evening over on TCF for Sidebar.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, I just need to turn on the camera and just leave it on.
Along with Lindsay, who's in the chat, and Ashley and Austin and
cast.
Who knows? A cast of untold millions or sevens.
All right. That's it for tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.